if a law is being promulgated and it's instituted, it has to go, the police must be carried along.
No. Hear me.
Is that what you're saying?
A law has to go through a public hearing.
Which it did.
Which it did, and the police were part of it. Now, the police coming out of it, I'm going back, your reference point was yesterday, because the first PRO said there's a law that is a problem. Now I'm saying to you, if you come out and make such a categorical statement, you're throwing that whole process away and saying that it was not worth it. Those are statements I say would not necessarily help the issue. Now, enforcing it is now a collective idea that everybody sits back and say, how do we approach this? One of the things that I find that is, not working for us, it's poor judgment. And our poor judgment is a lack of analytical rigor, whether from leadership, the citizens, or even the parties at play. When we lack the rigor and rather deal with superficial discussions as against going deeper, then we fail to spot issues. When you fail to spot issues, you don't know how to frame them. When you can't frame them and put them within a context that you serve as a meal, then there will be no balanced decision making.
Do you think that the governor of Benue State is able to frame this situation properly? Because he has asked his people to protect themselves.
Well, if you ask me...
Lawfully, though.
Yeah? No,
there's a caveat.
Now, how have you defined lawfully?
Well, that's
didn't
you read that story?
Just like you asked me, how do you define lawfully? Now,
okay.
I would define lawfully subject to the level of threat, and I can use anything. So it shouldn't even come up in the first place.
Okay, that speaks to security. Let's get perhaps this from a security perspective on that context. That will be from Abuja. Markwe.
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. But if I may just quickly pop one, I think it will be proper for Mr. Enang to clarify. Was he really saying that state governors are like 4-year-olds?
First of all, it's good to see you. That was not what I said. It was an analogy. And I'm talking about the maturity continuum of the Nigerian. If you have, woe unto you if your land is ruled by a king and that is a child. If you look at it, the context of maturity, Nigerians may not trust the ability of a certain institution, regardless of what. I'm not speaking to governors or whatever. It's an analogy that says, do you give what you want, a tool, to a child, or you give it to a mature person? And that's why it has not come through. Because if the maturity continuum, you have dependence, interdependence, and codependence. As long as the people are not seeing that maturity come through, they'll do all things to say, no, we don't believe in it. And it's part of it is trust.
Well, here in Abuja, we have with us Captain Bish Johnston, who is a former U.S. Navy and Army captain. You're welcome to our studios in Abuja.
Thank you.
Well, big controversy that is happening currently, and all of this is bordering on the security of lives and property. We have seen different situations happen in Benue, we've seen it in Adamawa, we've seen it in Taraba, we've seen it in Zamfara in some instances. What is your reading of all that is going on? Now the president is saying, this killing by herdsmen will no longer be tolerated. He wants the security operatives to move in. Mr. Enang thinks that statement is coming too late. What is your reading of it?
Yeah, the statement, came a little bit too late.
You agree with him?
I do agree with him. We have been calling and shouting and yelling that this problem is a national problem and requires a national solution. And that solution resided with the president. And it took him this long for him to even come out to come and speak. But, I'm not here to blame people. I'm here to, as a professional, to provide solutions to the problems, which we have been doing in the past.
Because in fairness to him, they might say that, yes, he might just be speaking to the people about this, but he's written to the Senate to tell them what he's been doing about trying to quell this crisis.
Yeah, I'm sure he's been doing one or two things to try to quell the problems. Look, these things are beyond what the president says or doesn't say. This goes back to the fundamental problem of federalism that we have been talking about in this country for a very long period of time. Our system is fundamentally flawed. Our security architecture is not serving us. It hasn't served us. Even the British, who we inherited this security architecture from, they've moved away from it. London has its own police. All the communities and provinces, they all have their own police. The security architecture in this country cannot serve this country. We can't run away from it. We must have state police. That's how it works in a federalism. That's how it works in a democracy. You cannot ask a people to go and govern themselves, and you don't allow them to secure themselves. It doesn't happen. So the question now is, so what is the job of the governor? Why do we have state assemblies? Why are they turning out laws? Who is going to enforce those laws? You see what is playing out in Benue State right now? The chickens have actually come home to roost, because the governor of Benue State had quickly understood that he is not actually the chief security officer of Benue State. And we have been saying this, that the governors are not the chief security officer of their own states, because they don't have any enforcement mechanisms. Even the laws that are being passed by various state assemblies, who enforces them? They cannot be enforced anytime those laws is not in line with the federal authority. If there is any disagreement between the state and the federal authority, the federal law enforcement agencies simply will not enforce the law.
Well, you heard, I mean, the analogy given by Mr. Enak. I don't know if you agree with him. He says, will you give a knife to a 4-year-old?
I cannot agree.
And he says by that, he's talking about the maturity of the state governments to be able to handle state policing. I
completely disagree with him. I disagree with him in the sense that these governors can equally they can be president. A governor can run for president and win. And who is to say that whoever is the president is more mature than the governors? You know, the fears of the people that the governors are going to abuse our misapplied state police forces is the same fear that we should even have at the federal level, because we've seen that play out over and over and over again, where a president misapplies federal police force and federal law enforcement agencies. So this is not something that is going to be unique to the governors. It's happened already at the federal level.
Mr. Johnson, I just want to come in there, because if you look at the peculiarities of the country, with the so many different ethnic groups, so many different languages, even within states, is there not a concern? Let me just give you an example of, there are actually a few states where you have ethnic majorities over several other ethnic minorities.
Yes.
And because of the ethnic majority, the governor generally tends to come from where there's an ethnic majority.
Correct.
Now, there are concerns that if, for example, you gave a state governor sole authority over a police force at a time when we have state government officials openly rigging elections, doing so many different things, is it not a concern that this could be used as a tool for, a kind of ethnic oppression?
Well, nobody is calling for a Wild Wild West situation here. The job of every central government is to provide oversight. You saw what played out in the United States. The DOG is not sitting, or FBI is not sitting right there and watching local police officers do whatever they want to do. There has to be a regulatory body at the federal level. That regulatory body, and by the way, nobody is asking for them to dismantle the federal police. There must be federal police. The federal police and the local police must complement each other.